Most people think becoming rich feels dramatic. They get the idea of wealth completely wrong. They think it's about high salaries, luxury cars, and zero financial stress. But real wealth doesn't start there. It starts with a much smaller moment. The moment you stop feeling scared every time your phone sends a bank notification. The moment checking your account stops feeling like emotional damage. You stop doing mental math before buying food. Stop wondering if one bad week will destroy your finances. Stop living in survival mode, and strangely enough, for a lot of people that shift happens around one number, $20,000, not a million, not six figures, not some fake hustle harder fantasy you see online, just $20,000 saved and invested correctly, because that's the point where money stops being only survival and starts becoming leverage. Welcome to Smart Money Cycle. This channel is about the hidden psychology behind wealth, the invisible habits that keep people trapped, and the mindset shifts that quietly separate financially free people from everyone else. And today, we're talking about the most underrated wealth milestone nobody explains properly: why reaching $20,000 changes the way your brain works forever. Lesson 1. Why most people never escape survival mode. Most people are not bad with money. That's the first thing you need to understand. They're exhausted. There's a difference. When someone lives paycheck to paycheck for years, their brain changes. Every purchase becomes emotional. Groceries become stressful. Unexpected bills become disasters. Small problems feel massive because there's no financial cushion absorbing the impact. Psychologists call this scarcity mindset, and a scarcity mindset is dangerous because it shrinks your thinking. When your brain is focused on surviving this week, it becomes almost impossible to think about the next 10 years. That's why broke people often make decisions that seem irrational from the outside. Buying cheap things that break quickly, using debt for temporary relief, avoiding investing completely, ignoring savings. It's not always stupidity. Sometimes it's survival psychology, because when your mind constantly feels threatened, short-term comfort becomes addictive. And modern society knows this. That's why everything around you is designed to keep you consuming. Notifications, flash sales, buy now, pay later, luxury lifestyles online, fake millionaire influencers renting success for attention. The system profits from emotional spending, not intelligent investing. And this creates a cycle, a dangerous one. The more stressed people become financially, the more they seek dopamine. And the easiest dopamine is spending, which creates more stress, which creates more spending. That's why this channel is called Smart Money Cycle, because financial freedom is usually not one giant decision, it's a repeated cycle of smarter behaviors, and the first major break in that cycle often happens at $20,000. Lesson 2. Why $20,000 feels different. So why this number specifically? Why not $5,000? Why not $100,000? Because $20,000 changes your relationship with fear. Think about the average person for a second. Most people couldn't survive a few months without income. One emergency can destroy years of stability. A medical bill, job loss, family problem, car repair. That's terrifying. Now imagine having $20,000 sitting there. Suddenly, life feels different. Not because you're rich, but because you finally have breathing room. You stop making desperate decisions. You stop tolerating toxic situations just because you're financially trapped. You gain something more valuable than status: options. And options change human behavior. Someone with zero savings thinks differently from someone with financial reserves. The person with no savings says, "I hope nothing goes wrong." The person with savings says, "If something goes wrong, I can handle it." That confidence changes everything. Your posture changes. Your stress levels change. Your patience changes. Even your ability to think clearly improves. Because constant financial fear consumes mental energy. In fact, studies have shown that financial stress reduces cognitive performance almost like sleep deprivation. Imagine trying to build wealth while your brain is permanently exhausted. That's the reality for millions of people, which is why the first real goal is not luxury, it's stable. and stability is incredibly underrated. Lesson 3, the hidden power of momentum. But here's where things get really interesting. The real power of $20,000 is not the money itself, it's momentum. Because once people prove to themselves they can save money consistently, their identity starts changing. And identity controls behavior more than motivation ever will. A person who says, "I'm trying to save money," behaves differently from someone who says, "I'm an investor." One is temporary, the other becomes part of who they are. This is why tiny financial wins matter psychologically. Your brain begins collecting evidence, evidence that you are disciplined, evidence that you can delay gratification, evidence that your future matters. And once that identity forms, your habits naturally improve. You spend differently, think differently, plan differently. That's why financially successful people often seem calm, because they're no longer operating emotionally, they're operating systematically. Meanwhile, most people live in reaction mode. They react to ads, react to trends, react to cravings, react to social pressure. And social pressure is one of the biggest financial traps in existence. People buy things to impress people who don't even care. Cars they can't afford, designer clothes bought on credit, expensive lifestyles funded by invisible stress. Actual wealthy people often look surprisingly normal because real wealth is usually quiet, debt is loud. Lesson 4, why people stay broke even with good income. This is something nobody talks about enough. A high income does not automatically create wealth, because if spending rises every time income rises, nothing changes. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it traps millions of people. Someone gets a raise, then immediately upgrades their apartment, upgrades their car, upgrades their habits. So even though they earn more, they still feel broke. That's why some people making $40,000 build wealth, while others making $200,000 stay stressed forever. Income matters, but behavior matters more. Because wealth is what you keep, not what you show, and social media completely distorts this reality. People see luxury online all day and assume everyone is rich except them. But most rich-looking lifestyles are financed by debt. The internet rewards appearance, banks reward payments, completely different systems. And if you don't understand that early, you end up performing wealth instead of building it. That's one of the most expensive mistakes people make. Lesson 5, the first investment shift. Now let's talk about the moment everything changes. The moment money starts working for you instead of against you. Because once someone reaches that $20,000 milestone, they usually begin understanding investing emotionally instead of intellectually. Before that point, investing feels abstract. Numbers on a screen, charts, complicated terms. But once your savings become meaningful, you realize something powerful. Your money can produce more money without your time. That realization changes the game completely, because most people spend their entire lives only understanding earned income. Work equals money. But wealthy people understand ownership, assets, investments, compounding. And compounding looks boring at first. That's why most people ignore it. The beginning feels slow, almost invisible. But over time, small, consistent investments become massive. That's why financially intelligent people focus less on looking rich today and more on building systems that quietly grow for years. Because freedom is usually built invisibly, the real meaning of wealth, 1600 to 2000. So no, $20,000 will not make you a billionaire. It probably won't make you look rich online either. But it can completely change your psychology, and psychology changes behavior. Behavior changes habits. Habits change your future. That's the real point. The first stage of wealth is not luxury. It's removing fear. It's waking up without panic, sleeping without financial anxiety, knowing one bad week won't destroy your life. That kind of peace is priceless. And once people experience it, they stop chasing fake status symbols because they realize something important. Looking rich and being financially free are completely different things. One is performance.